Morning and welcome to everyone in the audience here with us this morning and everyone joining us via Zoom. My name is Daniel Long and I will be your moderator for today's forum entitled BRI versus Chaos, PBBM Isolated, Philippines Support China's Middle East Mediation and Understanding World Order. We have four speakers with us today and they will be discussing five subjects. Number one, the Belt and Road Initiative in contrast to American war in the world, how the president of the Philippines is isolated. Number two, the Philippines is uh, called to support China's Middle East mediation. Number three, the South China Sea deal with China as the best option, with China's best option. Number four is understanding world order. Number five is synergy of the Belt and Road Initiative and the Global Security Initiative. Our first speaker is Herman Camentong Laurel. He's the president of Asian Century Philippines Strategic Studies Institute. He's the host of an online podcast, Global Talk News Radio, stream live on Facebook and YouTube on Sundays and Wednesdays. Let us welcome Camentong opening statements.
Magandang umaga po sa lahat sa ating mga nagmamalasakit na media na kasama natin live po rito from of the major and of course some of our friends from the freelance journalism community whom I will introduce later. Tuwing Sabado po, meron po tayo nitong media forum, media briefing with Zoom symposium para sa publiko sa media natin, pero ito ay ating hangad na maabot po ang ating policy makers at siyempre ang ating mga mamamayan. What is important is we are trying to guide the nation towards the right direction. Alam naman po natin ang bayan po natin itong mga panahon na to ay hindi po nalalagay sa magandang kalagayan. Inflation, our foreign policy is fused. Hindi naman po nagaganap at nagagampanan ng mga pangako ng mga politiko po natin, not only now but for so many decades now. Kaya po kami nagtatag nitong Asian Century Philippines Strategic Studies Institute para pag-aralan itong mga issue na to, itong mga crisis na to, itong mga hamon na to ng ating lipunan. Hindi lang mga politiko. Dahil ang mamamayan mismo dapat ang makaalam ng mga nangyayari. At kaya po kami nasa alternative media at ating isinasagawa ng mga broadcast na to sa ating bayan. Na kikita na natin po na yung mga ilan na laking budget eh, hindi na po maasahan talaga kung nasyon para makapagpasiya ng tama ang taong bayan. Maraming lokohan which we will always expose dito sa ating sessions dito tuwing Sabado na umaga alas 10 hanggang alas 12. Ako'y may 3 paksa. 2 kanina, naging 3 dahil meron tayong nahabol. I have 2 papers. I will not read them because I will try to limit myself to the next 5. Pero nais kong bigyan ng diin na dapat pakinggan ng mabuti ng ating mga audiences sa iba't ibang mga sektor sa lipunan po natin, lalo sa media. Mga publishers, pahayagan, mga editors ng mga pahayagan to listen to our analysis and prescriptions. Kasi po, yung ilang mga pahayag natin po, hindi na po talaga balanse po at sobrang killing na sa mga may kapangyarihang mga sektor sa kanilang paglalathala ng mga pangyayari. Now, itong nakaraang mayroong isang bagong balita na importanteng ating pagtuunan ng pansin at yan po yung ng Armed Forces of the Philippines at ng spokesman nito na nagsimula na daw ang superficial repairs sa BR Pera Madre. BRP Sierra Madre, yung at halos mag-collapse na po na barko ng Philippine Marines doon po sa Ayungin Shoal or anong tawag sa English nun? But Ayungin Shoal. And now, maganda sa ilang mga tenga pakinggan na nagmamatigas ang Pilipinas na ay gustong ayusin po yan, sovereign rights claim daw ng Pilipinas. Pero tandaan po natin, hindi lang po Pilipinas ang nag-claim diyan at hindi lang China na pinapalabas ng ilang mga impormasyon na China lang ang kakompetensya o katunggali ng Pilipinas sa Ayungin Shoal. Hindi po totoo yun. Andiyan pa rin po ang Malaysia. Ang Brunei is only 500 kilometers away from the Ayungin Shoal, nearer than the Philippines. So may claim din ng Brunei at yung ibang mga bansa po dito sa paligid ng South China Sea. So number one to establish. Number two, totoong may kasunduan ng Pilipinas noong panahon ni Presidente Erap Estrada na itong BRP Sierra Madre ay papayagan ng China na makapagdilim ng Philippine government ng supplies for humanitarian consideration, pag-sina at ano pa ang kailangan po ng ating mga marino para mabuhay ng maayos po doon sa BRP Sierra Madre na kinakalawang na, and it has been 24 years. Now, of course, maraming mga nanggagaling sa Philippine government na sinasabi walang ganyang klaseng kasunduan. Well, I don't know if our technician can put on screen what I have prepared, and we have been reporting before. 2013, May 29, 2013, report the Philippine Inquirer. It's in Viber. But anyway, at dito po, sinasalaysay ni Voltaire Gasmin na at that time, Defense Secretary ni Noynoy Aquino, 2013. At itong report, sabi po rito, nagkita po si Chinese Ambassador Ma Keqing at that time with retired General Voltaire Gasmin, who was the Department of National Defense Secretary. Ito po ang quote, in quotes ito. At ang reporter po ay si Francis Mangosing ng Daily Inquirer. So it can be easily referenced. Okay, ito po ang quote. And this is quoting Voltaire Gasmin. The Philippines, the Chinese side, were concerned with the Philippines coming up with structures, additional structures in the Ayungin Shoal. And I told her, si Ma Ching, ambassador, that the ship that is leading towards Ayungin is only for provisions of food and water for soldiers who are there. He, Voltaire Gasmin, told reporters when asked what they discussed. The BRP Sierra Madre is the Philippine Navy's detachment on Ayungin Shoal. Gasmin said, assured Ma Keqing, ambassador, would not build structures there. That the Philippines would not build structures there. So malinaw po, and there are other evidences that we can raise, but this is of course on record, in public record. Now, what we say is that for 24 years there has been no major issue with the Ayungin Shoal arrangements, the BRP Sierra Madre arrangement between China and the Philippines. 24 na taon pong matahimik po yan. Ilang araw po yung 24 years? 365 days in a year times 20 years is almost 7,000 days plus 3 years. Ilang insidente lang po ang nare-record natin. Maiisip ba ng iwan ang higit sa mga insidente na higit sa daliri sa isang kamay? You cannot recall. So, maayos po ang arrangement. Bakit ngayon napakadami na sa loob lang ng 8 buwan simula nung nag-pivot to the United States si Presidente Bongbong Marcos. Kaya napakarami ng insidente ngayon. Hindi dahil sa Philippine Army, Armed Forces, hindi dahil sa Philippine Coast Guard, hindi dahil sa Philippine government, dahil sa United States of America na nag-uudyok nitong mga to. So, ang gusto ng Estados Unidos ay tensyon tulad ng ginagawa na sa Ukraine at tulad ng na lalong ginagatungan with 2 additional aircraft carriers na padala po ni Presidente Biden sa West Asia or dating tawag ng mundo ay Middle East. Doon po sa Gaza Strip against Israel and vice versa. So, ang unang paksa, hindi na ako magpapahaba po dyan. We have put it on public record that we denounce the strategy of tension. The armed forces of the Philippines is being pushed by American geopolitics in our region due to the pivot to the United States of President Bongbong Marcos. And this is perilous, malaki pong peligro po ito sa Pilipinas dahil hindi po yung pagbabalik po ng ayungin doon sa Pilipinas ang hangat po ng at motibo ng Estados Unidos. Ang motibo po niyan ay itulak sa bakbakan ng Pilipinas sa isang higante na walang kakayanan ng Pilipinas sa manalo tulad ng ginawa ng Amerikano sa Ukraine at ngayon doon sa between Israel and Gaza Strip na lalala at baka po maging regional war. So that is the questions from our media, even from friends from the Zoom audience. I'll give it a few seconds, a few minutes if there are questions from the Zoom audience. So we cannot flash this at the moment, but it is on. No, it's already flashed there. So we are not speaking out of thin air. We're not speaking because as Tariela accuses us of being traitor. We are faithful to the facts and information. Tapat kami sa facts at sa impormasyon on record in history. Wala pong katraidoran dito. Ang may katraidoran po tulad ni Tariela na American voice na sadya pong sunod-sunuran sa Amerika, sa mga unang Amerikano na makakasama po sa Asia at sa Republika ng Pilipinas. So that is the first topic. That for questions, maybe even later you can ask, or you can just comment or put your questions on the Zoom, and we will get back to it. The second topic of mine is the Belt and Road Initiative, which we discussed last week, and I'm just timing myself to make sure I don't exceed my target of 10:30 matapos po ako. The Belt and Road Initiative ay isang 10-taong programa po na inansyon noong 2013 ni President Xi Jinping ng China. Now, mula sa kanluran, sinasabi po nila ang Belt and Road Initiative ay isang instrumento ng China para ma-dominate daw, ma-control daw ang mundo. Samantalang mula sa perspektibo ng China po, ito ay isang pangarap para sa mundo ng infrastructure project, economic development, pangangalakal or trade, aksyon ng napakaraming pundo para sa pagpapayaman po ng lahat ng mga dadaanan nitong interconnectivity through rail, transportation, telecommunication, mga projects, mga agriculture, irrigation projects, and so on. Ito ay nababatay po sa prinsipyo ng maraming sentro ng poder sa mundo at hindi po yung unipolar world natin o isa lang ang makapangyarihang bansa tulad nitong nakaraang 50 o 70 taon na Estados Unidos lang po ang nagahari sa mundo. Ito po ay binabago po nitong konsepto ng multipolar world which I would like to popularize among our people. Hindi na po isang powerful country kundi marami po. Meron pong na buo na samahan pong ng mga bansa tulad ng tinatawag na BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, na nadagdagan na po itong nakaraang ilan po ng 6 na bansa na kasama po ang Saudi Arabia, ang United Arab Emirates, ang Argentina, ang Turkey. Kaya po ito ay mas malaki na po sa tinatawag na G7 ng kanluran, this BRICS country. With the additions, it now represents 40% or more of the world's population. It represents 37% of the world's economy compared to 7 global GDP. So mas malaki na. Pero hindi pa nagigising po ang bayang Pilipinas dito dahil kontrolado ng Amerikano ang maraming mainstream media po natin at information system. Well, binabago namin, anunsyo namin sa mundo at sa ating madla ang Nasaan na ba tayo? Yung mga images. So, number 1, Belt and Road, 10 more years of Belt and Road ng vision po in the next 20 years, 10 years, from 2023 to 2033. Ang Pilipinas na iiwanan po dito. So, nakita po natin tumalo na mga leader po ng buong mundo. President Putin ng Russia, President Widodo ng Indonesia, President Erdogan ng Turkey, and so on. Number sabi ni Presidente Duterte, China important ingredient in build. Ano? At andyan po Joshua yung number 5, no? Anong mga tayo dam road initiative sa Pilipinas? Kaliwa Dam sana na itayo na yan dahil ngunit maraming nangaharang. Didiyan po yan, baka mawala pati yan. Yan ang supply ng tubig ng Metro Manila, Southern Tagalog sa susunod 20 taon. Itong mga nakaraang mga tag-init po natin, lagi may tayong water shortage. Ano? Ngunit ayaw ng mga Amerikano, ito ay gusto nilang mauhaw tayo at magalit sa China. Ayan po ang mga tricks ng Amerikano. Chico River irrigation, 10,000 Filipino farmers are benefiting from the irrigation. So, Chico River irrigation system na tinayo po sa tulong ng China. At yung south line natin, yung Bicol Express na tuwan-tuwa ang mga Bicolano na mabubuhay na ay suspendido ngayon dahil nga doon sa masamang relasyon natin sa China. Pero anong mga natayo na po? Just a few among very many. Ang susunod po, China-Philippine Bridges. Davao-Samal Bridge. Nagsimula na po, na-inaugurate na yan, na-launch na yan. Binondo Intramuros Bridge. Estrella Pantaleon Bridge. Yan ba ay masama sa bayan? Yan po ay konkretong pakinabang kumpara doon sa mga alitan tungkol sa Ayungin Shoal, tungkol sa BRP Sierra Madre, tungkol sa Scarborough Shoal, na mali-mali naman ang mga positioning ng Pilipinas tungkol dito sa mga bagay na ito. May pakinabang may 1 pulgada bang dagdag na teritoryo ng Pilipinas? Wala tayong nakikita. Puro ngaw-ngaw, away, ingay. Siguro para sa administrasyon ni PBBM may pakinabang dyan dahil is po doon sa failure niya, sa kabiguan ng kanyang administrasyon, sa budget po natin, sa taxes, sa empleo, and so on. Hindi lang po ilang buwang nakaraan, pinuri ni Bong Marcos ang China sa donasyon ng urea fertilizer dahil alam naman natin at that time, January this year, may krisis na tayo sa pagkain. Pero Pebrero, bumalik siya. At yun, nakipag-alyansa sa Amerikano at simula po yung mga negatibong mga anunsyo galing sa Malacanang tungkol sa China. Ang Estados Unidos pa dadala ng fertilizer or bigas na tulong dito sa bayan of vaccines? Hindi. Kaya ang pamagat ng isang section ko from build to base. Mga base militar lang, dagdag ng dagdag, 4 ng dinagdag. Pati BRP Sierra Madre gustong gawing forward operating base ng Amerikano po yan. I've already reported that. You can go to our website and see the news report from the American military magazine, War on the Rocks. Sabi ng report ng Amerikano, for the forward operating Sierra Madre. Hindi po inuulat po ito ng mainstream, pero kasama namin yung ibang mga mainstream media dito, Bulletin, Tribune, I think Saksi just arrived, RJ, EC has been very helpful in propagating SMNI also. Habang natin sa mga base militar na to. Hindi masyadong nauulat pero uulit ito. Maraming reklamo po doon sa military drills. Nasususpendi ang pangisda ng mga fishermen natin. Nawa yan. Paminsan-minsan hindi niyo makikita ang ulat pero andyan po ang mga perwisyo po nitong military drills ng mga Amerikano. That's number 9 slide, no? Joshua, no? Pati tayo ang gumakin doon sa base militar ng Amerikano tulad nitong depensa ni Teodoro sa na ginagastusan po galing sa budget natin. Pero para sa mga politiko tulad nila Gibo, malaking pakinabang. Kita po tayo natin sa next slide, na slide number 11. Po, billboard. Sinasabi niya, may billboard tayong hindi ba nakita nung nakarang mga araw? Higanteng billboard, 4 or 7 to 8 stories high or more, I'm not sure. Dinidepensa, hindi naman siya gumastos niyan. Isang Chinoy daw. At tingnan natin yung billboard, Joshua. Number 12. Kung para maalala po ninyo. Yung number 11, yung dinidepensa ni Gibo na hindi naman siya daw gumagastos. Itong slide na billboard. So, aming inalisa at binati lang po ng ating mamamayan ang siyang concerned about any threat to the Philippine territory. Pero pinapalaki. May mga billboard na lumabas para sa Pacquiao, kay Pacquiao. Ayan po slide number 13. Yung slogan doon sa billboard, doon sa baba, sa kaliwa, kay atin ito. Yung Scarborough Shoal daw, yung show, atin daw ito. Yan din po ang slogan doon kay Risa Hontiveros, atin ito. Amerikano sa taas po, yun ang report ng War on the Rocks. Ano sabi ng Amerikano? It's time to build combined forward-operating base Sierra Madre. Yan ang talagang nasa likod. Sino nagpupuntos nito? Sabi ni Gibo, hindi siya. Biglang lumabas yung billboard ni Risa Pacquiao. Amerikano ang nagpupondo nitong mga billboard. Halata na ba ninyo, taong bayan, ang ginagawa ng Amerikano at itong mga nagpapautusan na mga politiko po natin para maging bida po na sa mata ninyo. Pero sinusubok po pala tayo sa kapahamakan. And finally, ano talaga ang performance po ng bayan natin? Sa mga totoo, 93% want the government to pay attention to inflation, presyo, jobs, empleo, corruption, kriminalidad. Pero mula sa pahayagan na anti-Chinese, no? Yung Inquirer, kolumnista nila si Habito, si Lito Habito, ekonomista ni Cory Aquino. Anong sabi niya? Trailing our neighbors. Kulelat po tayo. Pinakamataas sa inflation sa ASEAN. Anong sabi ni Bobby Tiglao? Rice crisis screams Martin. Hindi pa po tayo umaabot sa pangatlong taon ni Bongbong Marcos. 6 na taon pa yan. Unang taon pa lang. May nananawagan ng resign. I think President Marcos should pay attention to our policy analysis, our policy prescriptions. Hindi ko po kami nagkakamali sa mga aming pagsusuri. Kami ang usas na una po at aming in-explain yung Maharlika Fund kung bakit po ito masama. Ngayon pati si Bongbong Marcos umaamin may problema and more. So I will go to my third plank, my third issue. Ito po naman po ay tungkol sa Pilipinas at anong tamang patakaran tungkol sa Middle East, doon sa problema sa pagitan po ng Israel at Palestine. I will not go back to the 2-week history that started in October doon sa attack ng Hamas sa Israel. Nandito na po tayo 2 weeks later. At yung nagbabanta na ground invasion of Israel into Gaza Strip. I will have to say that Gaza Strip will not be a cakewalk for Israel. Kaya po naghihele-hele ang Israel. Linggo na po delay ang ground war. Dahil alam po nila naghihintay ang Hamas sa IDF, Israeli Defense Forces. But that's another issue. What is the Philippines' correct position here? Ang unang response po ni Presidente Bongbong Marcos ay nakipanig po kagad sa Israel. I will also not pursue that to the correct position that for ceasefire in the Middle East. Hindi po siya nanawagan sa gobyerno. Nanawagan siya sa tao bayan ng Pilipinas, which is both politically appropriate and morally imperative. Kailangan malaman ng taong bayan. And ikatutuwa natin dapat na ganyan din po ang posisyon po ng People's Republic of China as expressed by President Xi Jinping. Itong second slide. Xi Jinping calls for immediate Israel-Hamas ceasefire as the US and United Kingdom stand with Israel. Ano ba ang solusyon dito? Ang dagdagan sa apoy na ginagawa ng Estados Unidos, 2 aircraft carriers, 2,000 American troops to the area, or yung tigilan muna ang barilan at bombahan at mag-usap. At tulad ni Vice President Sara at tayo po all out doon sa ceasefire at doon sa kapayapaan, and of course I'm going forward sa sarili Palestine at bansang sarili ng Israel at hindi po yung isang bawat lahi. Si Wang Yi Foreign Minister of China, Secretary Minister Lavrov of Russia. Diyan po sa slide 3 natin. And of course, China has a special envoy for the Middle East or West Asia, si Tsai Jun, na ang nakakahindak na pangyayari po, ang Arab ministers doon sa Beijing, isang malaking tropa po, almost 50 plus ministers, ang siyang nanawagan at pumunta kay Special Envoy Tsai Jun ng China to discuss the immediate ceasefire and the talks that must ensue. Para po nila, fourth slide natin. So, I go back to Bongbong Marcos. Sabi ko nga, PBBM is isolated in his policy of Israel, of standing with Israel. Nandiyan po, Marcos administration with Israel. Ano kaagad ang reaksyon ng ating mga kapatid na Muslim? Arm, Bangsa, Moro Autonomous Regional Government. Anyway, alam na po ninyo what the BARM means. Ano? Sabi ng BARM, Palestine is us. Ang mga Muslim sa Pilipinas po ay siyempre sa Palestine. Nakakalimutan ni BBM, milyon-milyon ang OFW natin sa iba't ibang mga bansa sa West Asia or Middle East. In Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, in Kuwait, kung saan-saan po dyan. Bakit hindi niya naisip yun? Bakit magbukas ng bibig niya na para sa Israel siya? Samantalang ang Estados Unidos at ang Israel, akap-akap, Biden and Netanyahu meets, after the bombing of the hospital in the Gaza, kung saan in one incident po ang namatay ng mga sanggol, bata, mga kababaihan at iba pa. Mga bagay na to, hindi makakaligtas ng Pilipinas sa kahirapan kung hindi kayo muna dito sa mga issue na to at tumulong sa ating bansang mga liderato. Dito sa partikular naman ng Israel at Palestinian, merong solusyon. At yan po ay binibigkas din po ng ating mga kapananaw po dito. Sara Duterte and our Muslim brothers and the Asian Sea Philippine Strategic Studies Institute. The solution is a two-state solution. Israel at Palestine may sariling bansa, hindi po bansa na kontrolado like a concentration camp ng at itatrato ng Israel na kapantay po ang pagkatao po ng sa mga Israelis like all the rest in the multipolar world. Yan po, I think nag-overshoot ako ng 7 minutes lang po. No? So if there are any questions, I'll allow 30 seconds for questions. May questions ba anywhere? I assume there are no questions because I tried to cover all the aspects. I hope Ayan po, maraming hindi nakakaalam po.
Paki-explain lang po yung open and
yung po ang tinutukoy ng open and concentration. Nakapaligid bakod. Yeah. At walang lalabas, papasok. Hindi dumadaan po. Kain tubig, kailangan dumaan sa Israel. At ang exit entry po sa Gaza Strip po may sariling to o daanan ang mga Palestine, may sariling daanan ang Israeli. Apartheid na tinatawag. So, of course, hindi na babatid po ng marami sa mundo ay tinatrato na second-class human beings, hindi just citizens, but human beings ng mga Palestine. Pagkakataon na makapaghanap ng trabaho kung hindi dumaan sa Israel. Hindi tulad natin, kung maraming walang trabaho, pero pwedeng maghanap ng trabaho. Doon sa Gaza Strip, dadaan ka sa Israeli authorities bago ka makapag-apply ng trabaho. At abor ng Israeli government na bigyan ng trabaho. Pero ngayon po, kita po natin, may Hamas nga. Ang Hamas sabi nila terorista. Pero kung ikaw ay descendant, anong tawag sa Tagalog niyan? Descendant. You know? Apo ka ng mga original na mga Palestino 75 years ago na pinalayas po ng puwersa ng Israel, ng mga Zionists na dumating po doon sa Palestine at that time, 1947, 48, at physically through terrorism, 50,000 Palestinian families. At sumunod po, pinagpapatay po ang lahat ng kalalakihan na nadadatnan nila po doon sa dating Palestine para ma-take over mga bahay and so on. 25 years old na. At yan po ay nasa isip mo. Terorista ba kung gumanti ka? At ninanais mong lumaya ang iyong Gaza Strip, yung community. So, hindi papasok sa kung sinong terorista, sinong hindi. Ng Western, sabihin natin sa isang gandang salita, tae ng British colonialism po dyan sa Palestine. Ano? Alam po ninyo, ang unang binoto ng Jewish Congress, kasi nagtitipon-tipon ng mga Jews sa buong mundo under the Rich Herzl initiative, no? Si Herzl. Anyway, that's history. Ang binoto na tatatagan nila ng Israel, the promised land, ay Uganda sa Africa, hindi Palestine. Kasi nga wala namang tao. Uganda na yung malalawak, which is also a British colony. Pero bakit sa West Asia nilagay o Middle East? Para yan po ay maging kumbaga mina, mine. Yung anti-personal mine, pag natapakan ng kung sino-sino ay sasabog. Yan naman ang nangyayari po lagi diyan sa Palestine ngayon. It is a built-in crisis center that the Americans now, British then, can come in to intervene against the Arabs. Binigyan ng Britanya o ng Estados Unidos o silang dalawa ng nuclear weapons ang Israel para hindi makapalag ang mga Arabo ng mga bansa at makaganti. They are estimated to have around 50 nuclear weapons, 200 nuclear weapons. Pero siyempre hindi nila magamit na. Kasi kung yung kapitbahay lang nila ang gagamitan nila, sila din tatamaan. Pero may dilema dyan. Kasi tinatawag na Samson option ang Israel. Ano yung Samson? Alam niyo yung kasaysayan ni Samson, di ba? Nabulag siya, tinali siya, pero ang ginawa niya para lumaban, giniba niya, tinulak niya yung mga poste ng templo at giniba niya, pagsakan lahat, patay lahat. Yan po ang Samson option po ng Israel na palubugin ang buong Middle East or West Asia na tinatawag. Lalo-lalo na after 2017, nagkaroon ng rumors na ang Pakistan dahil po sa ginagawa ng Israel, banta na bibigyan ng nuclear weapons ang mga kalaban because Pakistan is the only Muslim country that possesses nuclear weapons. At may banta na kumalat po na magbibigay ng nuclear weapons sa mga bansa na kalaban ng Israel kung gumamit ng nuclear weapons ng Israel. So, na po dyan sa issue na yan. So that is the situation. Why should the Philippines have a voice in this? Because tayo ay nagdudusa dahil dito sa mga nangyari sa Middle East o West Asia. Lalong tataas po ang gasolina next week or two because global fuel prices will be go up with the tensions there. And siyempre, sunod yan, tataas ang presyo ng fertilizer, problema na dadag sa food production po natin. Any other question? If not, I will pass on the mic to our moderator and the next topic.
Thank you, Kamentong, for your presentation. We hope that the Filipino people will heed Vice President Sara Duterte's call for Filipinos to call for a ceasefire in the Israel-Palestine conflict. Before we move on to our next speaker, I'd like to read a statement from a young Filipino Palestinian. This is from the Philippine Daily Inquirer, reported by Maria Ceres Doyo. This is a young Filipino Palestinian. She says, quote, "If you ask the people of Gaza if they support Hamas, they would simply say they do not have a choice. Imagine living in an open-air prison for years, with electricity and water allowed for only 3 hours a day, sudden bombings here and there. Wouldn't you want to fight back? 50% of the Gaza population are children who witnessed the killings of their sisters, brothers, and parents." Yun po, that is the young Filipino-Palestinian statement as reported in the Philippine Inquirer by Maria Doyo. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Kaado Paglinawan. He is the anchor of a program, Ang Maestro, on the Katipunan channel on YouTube. He's the author of a new book entitled The Poverty of Power and the Power of Poverty. He is the Vice President for Internal Affairs for Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies. Let us welcome Kaado for his opening statements.
I would like to greet the audience and those who are in the Zoom. A pleasant good morning to all of you. If I may summarize the positions taken by Kamentong Laurel in behalf of the Asian Institute. I would like to summarize it in one sentence. Against the independent foreign policy provisions of President Jr. has compromised the Philippines. The reasons are nebulous. Everybody's guessing why he's doing it. But one thing is clear, the results are ominous to the best interests of the Philippine people. We are not only being dragged into difficulties engendered by the war, we are also now being dragged into uncertainty uncertainties with the war in Israel. Wars, we seem to be proceeding to a proxy war of our own right here where we are. We're being used for the interests of a third party without a commensurate benefit or even promise of a deliverable advantage to the country. The president has isolated the Philippines from the centrality of the world development that is now being led by the BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And we are being pushed deeper and deeper into an inflation which our country can ill afford. Summarizing all this, in my position today, Philippines' best options for South China Sea deals with China. I would like to retitle my nation as of missed opportunities. There are at least two agendas that are presently pending in the implementation table between China and the Philippines that have remained unfulfilled, either because Filipinos are just too incompetent or at negotiation, or that third-party interests have stepped on the toes of this administration. I have written in the past how at least on two priorities the Philippines can best engage China for the long-term benefit of our people. First, on Scarborough Shoal and other fisheries matters, I have suggested seeking China's assistance in helping develop our fishing industry, not just for the South China Seas, but beyond, building towards sea capability. At present, our fishing technology is still on the basnik. Alam po ninyo, yung basnik is on the way from the ships of the early Austronesians that came into our archipelago. Yung pinagsimula ng bayanihan. On the joint project for oil and gas exploration at back, or the TOEIF. Since Teddy Buksin sabotaged decisions towards the end of the Duterte administration, we have not received for what this very crucial has reached Andy Marcos administration. What makes these two minimum areas of cooperation missions impossible is the United States interference both in lawfare and propaganda war using the Philippines as proxy to its hegemonic pivot in the Indo-Pacific. On February 9, 2022, the American Prospect headlined that the U.S. Congress had appropriated $500 million, $500 million, for negative news coverage of China in the American, directing funding to the U.S. Agency for Global Media, a U.S. foreign media service, as well as local out programs to train foreign journalists. Pero ano ang narinig natin sa Hontiveros? In the formality of a congressional hearing, asking Tariela a leading question to confirm her assumption and innuendo that it is China that is engaging in state-funded disinformation. Ito po, klaro-klaro. Pinasa sa Kongreso ng Amerika, state-sponsored information terrorism. Tapos tatanungin niya si Tariela about China. Later, I will explain why that is ridiculous. Money keeps on changing hands among Filipino government officials. Kamentong kaya gustong-gusto ng mga general mag-provoke dyan sa South China Sea. Dalawang rason. Una, they will be engaged in action. Bibilis. At pangalawa, magkakapera pa sila sa bulsa. Journalists, I am happy that at least one of the podcaster is showing signs that he is already taking the middle ground. Nakikita na siguro niya na pabagsak na si Bongbong Marcos at paangat na, not by Sara Duterte's initiative, of the intellectual bankruptcy, the president's cousin, who is Speaker of the House of Representatives, provoking political engagement and action. If not for the corruption involved here, only an idiot believe that playing cat and mouse, or what they call chicken, in the South China Sea with the China Guard will result in anything. Diski na nung gawin nyo, yung patentero dyan, isa lang ang pupuntahan. Tumbo. At pag nangyari yun, eh kawawa naman ang masasakripisyong personnel, Philippine Air Force o Philippine Navy, dying for the United States of America. Pero kating-kating na mga Amerikano, Kasi ang kanilang wish is for an accident at sea that can trigger them to die to the last Filipino. When Robin Padilla brought this commonsensical analysis out in a congressional hearing involving the Department of National Defense and the Philippine Coast Guard, surface and say in social feasting on the second week. Nakita po natin ng pruweba ng dol na kumaka sa mga trolls. But when a wannabe common citizens who advocate peace and restraint in the South China Seas, pro-China and traitors, the is awarded by President Marcos with a distinguished service. Hindi pa kayo naguguluhan sa mga nangyayari. Tapos lalabas pa yung Bill Gilbert, Teodoro, Risa Hontiveros at Manny Pacquiao. Yan ba ay funded ng sarili nilang pera? O funded ng ating public funds? I doubt it. Masyadong extravagant. Those who read history, however, know that Deng Xiaoping told President Gloria Arroyo that setting aside dispute and pursuing joint development has been among China's priorities with its neighbors in both continental and maritime areas. His successors, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and especially Xi Jinping, have since made this easier as the Belt and Road Initiative grows bigger and bigger each year. But further in China's past, we see substantial proof of other unimaginable. Stars, the People's Republic of China conceded to Vietnam 2 dashes at the Gulf of Tonkin from its original 11-dash line. Massachusetts Institute of Technology scholar Taylor shows in an authoritative study that in 17 of 23 disputes with various land and sea neighbors, China has either abandoned or significantly reduced original claims since the Communist Party took over in 1949. Alam po ninyo maraming claims sa China sa mga kapitbahay niya. Nung pang hindi nagte-take over at hindi pa nanalo ang People's Republic of China. Pero nung mag-handle po ang PRC, in those concessions, the study shows that China has abandoned 1.3 million square miles of land. The Philippines should be the first to know about this because 600 years ago it was already our modus vivendi between Sultan Paduka Pahala and Emperor Yongle. China has made itself predictable when it comes to foreign relations. In the 1950s, Chinese leaders introduced the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Mutual respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty, mutual non-aggression, non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equity and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. Kaya ako sinabi kanina na yung pinangangalandakan ni Risa Hontiveros is ridiculous that there is a state-sponsored disinformation campaign that China is doing. Klaro-klaro naman, China operates through the China Daily, CGTN, Global Times, mga open government, sarili nilang government information news organization. Alam po foundational values of peaceful coexistence, enhanced by Confucius' concept of harmonious society, influenced China's policy making. At the beginning of the 20th century, China established new directives to build a harmonious world, a harmonious Asia, a harmonious neighborhood around China that promotes coexistence and prosperity. OSWE, spelled XEHEXIE, stresses the pursuit of coexistence while respecting differences and solved through appropriate channels according to the laws and principles to ensure balance is maintained. In other words, when China goes to the negotiation table, everything is on the table. Kung ano mapag-usapan yan sa lamesa na yan, yan ang iiwanan. Hindi katulad natin. We scheme, we steal ideas, we invent witnesses, we borrow lies from the United States, we try to intimidate China in the so-called West Philippine Seas when we don't even have a leverage. Eto napakalaking bansa coming on the table. In fact, it defines its foreign policy way ahead in 4 ideas. Una, let's seek harmony. Pumupunta tayo sa lamesa para mag-usap, para magkasundo. Anong ginawa ni Teddy Boy Locsin? He went to the negotiation table not to agree, but to disagree and to impose on China the Philippine Constitution. Isira ulo. Unconstitutional daw. Yung joint venture, 64. Palibasa, hindi naman diplomat itong na ito. Walang alam sa... One of President Rodrigo Duterte's biggest mistake is making this American boy the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Pasintab na post. Pero nagkamali kayo dyan. Big time. Anong ginawa? Sinabutahe kayo in the end. Hindi naman niya alam ang konsepto ng condominium. Hindi niya alam ang konsepto ng joint sovereignty. Hindi niya alam kung paano ang dalawang bansa isasantabi ang kanilang mga sariling batas para maisa sa isang tratado kung saan ang soberanya nito at soberanya nito ay magkakaisa para paandarin yung proyekto. Ginawa ng Istimor, mas maliit pa sa atin ang Istimor. At hindi lang isa ang kausap niya. Dalawa. Kausap niya Indonesia, kausap niya Australia. Nakumbinsi ng Istimor sa isang joint sovereignty or condominium project. Indonesia at Australia. Bakit hindi natin magawa? Samantalang China na nga nag-o-offer sa atin. At bakit natin pinatatagal? Pangalawa, big countries should respect small countries and vice versa. Sabi nga ni Lao Tzu, smaller streams and large rivers and seas work together. Ang mga sapa, ang ilog, at ang buong karagatan ay nagkaisa at some point. John exemplified the China's government's policy of fostering an amicable, secure, and prosperous neighborhood, recalling mutual respect for sovereignty. Hindi yung ang claim mo sovereign rights. Ang claim ko sovereignty. Tapos sasabihin mo pa sa akin, hoy, sa akin yan ha. Ano pa? Reinforced by diplomatic concepts as equality. Pag humarap ka sa China, China treats you as an equal. Pag humarap ka sa Estados Unidos, you are a tuta. Mutual and win-win cooperation. Anak ng pating, sa 60-40 nga, hindi nga mutual benefit eh. Lamang pa tayo. Sa atin ho yung 60%. Ayaw pa natin. Miski na nung gawin nyo sa zero, i-multiply nyo by any number, zero makukuha nyo. Pero 60% is 60%. Win-win cooperation. Panalo ka, panalo ako. I often wondered why Asians, especially Chinese, bow greeting each other until I encountered a line in the Book of Changes. Para maintindihan po kasi namin ng kaharap, nag-aaral kami. Hindi namin sila tinatawag ng kung ano-ano mga pangalan. Alam niyo sabi? The proud dragon repents. Ganda. The proud dragon repents. Lao Tzu explained this. Why? Because great strength, according to him, can easily deteriorate. Ayan ang nakikita natin ngayon sa Estados Unidos. The third idea, therefore, says large countries should not pursue supremacy or become consumed by their quest for power, an expression of China's rejection of hegemony. Pang-apat, conflict between nations and states should be handled through bilateral negotiations. Walang ibang makikialam. However, kung may aggression that violates territorial sovereignty, katulad ng mga provokasyon ng Coast Guard natin dyan sa South China Sea, ipoprovoke nila. Tapos pagka nagalit si Danny Long at sinuntok ako, aggression yan. China ensures that a just violence is met with just means. What does that imply? That they will counterattack if they are attacked. Yan po ang prinsipyo nila na active defense. Yan ang orientation ng People's Liberation Army. Kaya hindi ko maintindihan yung mga debate nila na civilian daw itong ating Coast Guard, pero yung Coast Guard ng kabila ay militar. Hindi ko maintindihan yung mga ganong mga semantics na wala namang paroroonan. Kung paano ginagamit ng isang bansa ang kanyang Coast Guard, yan ang definisyon ng nature ng Coast Guard, maritime protection and safety. These are the principles that China has observed for centuries in how it deals with other nations. The historical transparency makes it easy for any other people to deal with the Chinese. That's why throughout the centuries we have some degree of Chinese DNA. We have allowed our race to be infused with Chinese blood. But we do things differently in the Philippines, however. Our foreign policy depends on who sits in Malacanang. Our government is now even confused as to what our core interests are as a nation. Ano ba? Inflation ba o sovereignty? May kaaway ba tayo o wala? Ano ang unang papatay sa atin? Gutom? O isang banyaga? In the midst of miserable economic woes confronting our country today, President Marcos is busy with the American playbook in the South China Seas that supported only by 7% of the Filipino people. Do you want to go to Las only 7% winning? You won't. And sooner or later, I think sooner, the ruling Filipino people will take in its own hands once again, as it did in 1986. Its rightful role as absolute sovereign of this country, and will show these politicians, these inept government officials, and these incompetent leaders. The way, according to Mao Samonte, the way, the truth, and life. Thank you. Any question?
If you have any questions for the speakers, just send it in Zoom, or we'll just read them later. All right. All right. Thank you, Kado, for your opening statements. I hope the Filipino will understand that the path forward for development is not but partner with a neighboring country that treat equal.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We'd like to request Ma'am if she's ready. Let's introduce Ma'am Sasot if she's ready. Ma'am A's like to be ready. Let's introduce
Who will
Ma'am
speak
Anna.
first?
Right.
Is it Sas or me?
Wait, yourself.
She's I think Ma'am Anna is on right
Alright.
now. So
I'm
Sino ba
online.
mauna?
I have pauna siguro muna ako kasi I have another
Okay.
appointment after this. Yeah.
All right.
Pero I will be
Our
online
next
just to
speaker.
monitor everything. Yeah.
Okay. Our next
Ako
speaker
kasi
is
I'm
Professor Ana
in
Malindo
a program. Yeah.
Our next speaker is Professor Ana Malindo. She's joining us via Zoom in China. She is the Vice President of External Affairs of the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute. Let us welcome Professor Ana Malindo for our opening statements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and good morning to everyone. Good morning to Kaado and Kamentong and also to Joshua. I hope I'm coming in clear, and I'm now in Xinjiang, China, so I want to speak first before Sas, and Sas can have more time later. I have another appointment, but still this is an important forum, I think. The topic that I will talk about is, kasi marami nang sinabi sina Kamentong and Kaado on issues related to the South China Sea and even the Palestine-Israel crisis at the moment. So I will focus on China's Belt and Road Initiative and also the synergy of the BRI and the GSI. I think this is one of the most important global issue or topic of our time. So let me read quickly my opening statement. Probably later after Sas deliver her talk, saka na siguro ako mag-entertain ng question para makasave tayo ng oras because it's already what? It's already 11:21. Okay? Amid the global governance issues of our time, two topics or initiatives proposed by China that are of great importance and relevance in our rapidly changing world are the synergy between the China's Belt and Road Initiative and its Global Security Initiative. These two initiatives are visions proposed by China that transcend borders, visions that hold the promise of prosperity and peace on a global scale. The synergy between China's BRI and its GSI, two monumental undertakings that not only have the potential but are already reshaping world history, represents China's vision for connectivity and development and its commitment to global peace and security and stability. The BRI was born in 2013. It is an initiative that has seen investment of billions or trillions of dollars in infrastructure projects, including roads, railways, ports, and energy pipelines. It encompasses both the Silk Road economic belt, focusing on land-based connectivity, and the 21st century maritime Silk Road, emphasizing sea routes knitting together a tapestry of nations and people. At its core, the BRI, no doubt, is about forging connection. Notably, the Belt and Road Initiative has played a multifaceted role in economic and social development of Southeast Asian countries over the past decade, especially for ASEAN countries who are officially members of the BRI like Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. Sadly speaking, I think the Philippines is not yet an official member of the BRI. Some of the positive impacts of the BRI on Southeast Asian countries include economic growth, in view of the fact that increased infrastructure and connectivity have stimulated economic growth in many Southeast Asian countries. Improved transportation and logistic networks had made it easier for businesses to move goods and people, leading to increased trade and investment and improved market access for businesses in the region, driving economic expansion. Also, infrastructure projects funded by BRI have generated employment opportunities benefiting local communities and contributing to poverty reduction in many areas. Likewise, improved infrastructure has boosted not only tourism in many Southeast Asian countries, but most importantly, technology transfer and knowledge sharing, which have long-term benefits for the host country in terms of capacity building and innovation. Indeed, the BRI has a positive role in economic and social development of Southeast Asian countries over the past 10 years by promoting infrastructure development, economic growth, and regional integration. But how this connect with global security or the Global Security Initiative of China? What's the connection between the infrastructure development and global security? What's the profound interplay and the synergy between China's BRI and GSI? First and foremost, the BRI is a gateway to world economic stability and security. Economic development and security are intrinsically linked. The BRI's infrastructure investment promote economic stability in partner countries, reducing the potential for conflict that often arises from economic hardship. By nurturing economic growth and reducing inequalities, the BRI in many ways is a bastion against instability that often leads to conflict and insecurity. In a world where nations prosper, the seeds of peace find fertile ground, stable, prosperous nations are less likely to engage in activities that threaten regional or global security. Also, BRI is a peace-building project that enhances diplomacy through connectivity. The enhanced connectivity that BRI provides through its vast and networks of infrastructure and trade routes facilitate people-to-people exchanges, trade, and cultural and civilizational interactions. This connectivity fosters greater understanding, harmony, trust, and diplomacy among nations. With mutual interests and shared experiences bind nations together, the prospect of conflict are significantly reduced. As nations become more interconnected, the potential for conflict diminishes and opportunities for collaboration increase. Furthermore, infrastructure woven by the BRI is not merely concrete and steel. It is a lifeline in time of crisis. For instance, non-traditional security challenges of counter-terrorism and counter-piracy. Improve and enhance transportation networks and maritime security along the BRI routes contribute to the fight against terrorism and piracy. In fighting terrorism, it is a must to address both the symptoms and the root causes. And one way to do that is by eliminating poverty, backwardness, and social injustice. BRI's commitment to enhancing maritime security along its routes reinforces efforts to ensure and safeguard freedom of navigation. Secure trade routes and well-connected regions are less susceptible to illegal activities threatening security and are essential for global economy and international security. The BRI is also a lighthouse of hope for conflict zones, regional stability, and security. Many BRI participating countries are located in regions marked by historical tension or conflicts. BRI contributes economic development and cooperation. Where there is economic opportunity, there is potential for peace. Stable regions are less prone to conflicts that can have global repercussions. On this note, it is if one will closely examine the GSI principle or the Global Security Initiative principles align with the BRI's goal of creating a more secure and stable environment for economic cooperation, since GSI is about collaboration with nations worldwide to combat terrorism, augmenting peacekeeping efforts, and strengthening security capabilities. So there is that synergy. Now, what is in pragmatic terms the GSI is offering? The GSI basically is offering interconnected security or interlinked security, and that means development is one of the important factors to that. Central to this endeavor is a profound commitment to upholding each nation's sovereignty, security, dignity, territorial integrity, developmental choices, social, economic, political system, and core national interests. So I think these are important principles that both BRI and the GSI is trying to share to the world. And I think these are important when you talk about maintaining peace and security, not only regionally, but even globally. And it has something to do, of course, with what is going on in the world right now, like the Palestinian-Israel conflict, and many other conflicts going on across the globe. So on that note, to conclude, the synergy between China's Belt and Road Initiative and its Global Security Initiative plays a vital role in constructing a harmonious world where nations mutually respect each other's core interests and resolve dispute diplomatically and peacefully. The synergy between these two initiatives paints a visionary picture of a world where economic prosperity and global security are not incongruent ideals, but interwoven destinies. It is a vision of a world where nations, culture, and peoples
Recording in
converge
progress.
along the path of shared opportunity and mutual security. In a way, the BRI, on this note, I believe that the synergy and the interconnectedness of the BRI and the GSI taken as a whole can forge a brighter, safer, and prosperous world for all. Through initiatives like the BRI and GSI, it is possible to build literal and bridges toward a future where cooperation and security prevail. In doing so, we contribute a safer and more prosperous world for generations to come that benefits all nations. Ladies and gentlemen, our media friends, colleagues, thank you so much for the opportunity and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ana Malindog-Oy, for that wonderful presentation on the synergy of the Belt and Road Initiative and the Global Security Initiative and how it provides a road to world peace for the world.
I'll
Our
entertain
next
question
speaker
Daniel later,
is,
probably
Ms.
after SAS.
Oh, sure. If we have a few questions from our Zoom audience or in the audience, you may ask Professor Ana Malindog-Oy.
Later. Let SAS
There are
speak
none.
first. Yeah.
Later. All right,
Later.
all right.
Let
Thank
SAS,
you.
because we don't
We'll
have
turn to-
much time. It's already 11:30.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. Our next speaker is Ms. Sasrogando Sasot. She is an IR scholar who learned in Manila, Hong Kong, The Hague, LA, and Maastricht. She is a PhD student in Beijing, and she'd like me to introduce her as a proud American colony traitor. American colony traitor. Let us welcome Sasrogando Sasot for opening statements.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Clearly.
We
Yes,
can hear you.
clearly.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear
Clear?
you. Morning. Clear, very clear.
Hello, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Ito po ang mouthpiece of Beijing in Beijing. Hello, Kamentong. Kamusta ka dyan? So, bago ko simulan to, no, I think I would diverge a bit with hello. Magda-diverge lang ako a bit sa recommendation ni Kamento. I think the two-state solution sa Israel and Palestine is no longer tenable. We have to think beyond the European state system. This actually produced conflict. So as they say, you cannot dismantle the master's house by using the master's tools. So it has to have a more, it has to go beyond, it has to be there somehow, pero it has to go beyond simple state solution. It has to touch on solutions based on strategies by different civilizations on how to manage conflict. So we cannot just rely on Western civilization on how to manage conflict because ang kanilang solution talaga is to form states. No, maybe it's not. Maybe the solution is somewhere there. That's why scholarship, studying history is very important. Not because of we just want to know what happened in the past, so that we can also be able to imagine a future based on strategies that work in the past, and whether we can graft them onto our current situation. So my presentation is about the reordering of Asia, and please bear with me here. I think I will be providing ang ganda ng transition namin, no? From the particular to the global. And of course, we have to have a historical perspective of what's going on in the world right now, especially in Asia. I will be focusing primarily on East Asia. I think Ka Mentong and Ka Ado already touched on specifics in Western Asia or the Middle East, and now we're gonna move on to our side of the road. So why is the presentation entitled Reordering of Asia? Because the order of Asia has been reordered several times. Okay. And paano ba to? Okay. Okay. So kung napapansin ninyo, I don't know if you can see this can you see the entire screen? Can you see the entire screen ba? O ako lang? Can you see
Yes,
the
we
entire
can. Thank
screen?
you.
Even
We can
on the
see,
right
Sas.
side?
We can see the screen. Don't
Yes,
worry.
yes.
We can see it. Proceed.
Okay, so this
Yep.
this
Even the
is
world
the
system before in the picture.
okay. So ang makikita nyo dito is this is the circuit of world trade, circa 1300, no? As you can see, this is how goods, people, etc. were flowing in the huge African Eurasian landmass. Okay, so what we mean by circuit is dito yung papaano umiikot sa bawat system in different I'm not gonna say regions because the idea of a region is just a very new idea in world history, but this is more like how trade flows in Europe, Africa, and Asia for almost a century. No, I think this got perfected, especially after the fall of the Mongol Empire, which is the largest continuous land empire in world history. And so this was the modus vivendi of trade before. Now, this has changed. Okay, so yung mga economic integration, etc., this has already happened in world history, but this has changed approximately around 15th century, especially in the beginning of 1400, when Columbus, quote unquote, discovered the Americas. As a European who discovered the Americas, he went back to Europe. He declared, that there is a new world, etc. And this, of course, produced a different kind of understanding among ang mga nag-away pa noon, okay, is the kingdoms in the Iberian Peninsula. So that's between Spain and Portugal. So 1494, dahil hindi sila magkasundo kung paano i-divide ang mundo. Okay? So they entered into a treaty called Treaty of Tordesillas. So this is the first grand division of the world backed up by international law. Okay? So yung mga sinasabi nilang, let's have a rules-based order of the world. The world has never been outside the rules of Europeans since the 15th century. So, but this is the first grand wholesale division of the world. So I believe that you have heard this in your elementary or high school world history education. Pero as every one of you who studied world history in the Philippines, hindi ito na-explain mabuti of what was the implication of this treaty. The implication was, as you can see there, the world was divided between Spain and Portugal. So bale, the world is owned by either Spain or Portugal. But of course, later on, other Europeans joined the fray of dividing the world amongst themselves, and eventually, this led to this division of the world. So lahat ng blue dyan at light blue these were controlled or influenced by Europe. Yung, well, this is not really blue, but I believe this is teal. So the dark teal, these are communities, areas of the world colonized or controlled by Europe. So can you imagine, Europe was just like a little spot in the world. Mali pa nga tong map na ito because Africa is so little. It's much larger than North America and South America. Anyway, so they divided the world amongst themselves. Ito akin. So following the Spanish and Portuguese way of dividing the world. Okay. And then after World War One, no, na nagkagulo na yung mga Europeans, it's now the time of the Americans. So if European colonization was all about dividing the world amongst themselves, no, the United States, which is still a very which is actually just an offshoot of Europe, they were a latecomer colonizers. So what they did, they have mastered the power of the sea. Okay, so ginawa nila, they put on bases all over the world. Okay. And as you can see, yan ang US military bases around the world. So if you can see, this one is just like so similar from the US ordering of the world. Now, what has this produced? Okay, so from this one, okay, na yung circuits of world trade, what happened because of the dominance of Europe through their colonization project, it produced this economic arrangement in the world. So you do have core countries, semi-peripheries, and peripheries. So the core countries are the European, the West. Okay, so what they did, okay, they take cheap labor and raw materials from the peripheries. So these are the colonized countries. So they send us the raw materials to the core countries, and then the core countries produce the final goods. Okay? So at the middle is ito yung semi-periphery na mga bansa. Ito yung mga nasa middle development. Okay? So this has become the structure of the world for a long time. And as we can see, the Philippines is still in the periphery. We supply cheap labor and raw materials, and then we are just consuming goods produced by the more developed countries, those that have a more industrially developed manufacturing system. But of course, this has changed with the rise of China, because China was able to produce cheaper goods. Which was able to compete at every price point in industrial countries. So you can see, to summarize, so this is the material ordering of the world for over 500 years. So you have the colonization by Europe, and then you have the proliferation of US military bases all around the world, which is just a continuation by other means of European colonization. Okay, so what is the rise of Asia all about? Okay, so this has long been a long process. Okay, of course, pag sinabi natin rise of Asia, meron bang fall of Asia? Yes, there was a fall of Asia. Okay, the fall of Asia started through the Opium War, when China was too weak to resist trading rights demands from the West. Okay. Why it was too weak? It didn't have a powerful navy, because the Western powers was able to defeat China through their powerful navies. Ang China kasi niyan noon, they didn't really develop a powerful navy, and their whatever counts as a naval force sa kanila were just used to combat piracy. Okay? Because for a long time, the only problem, the only sea problem, security problem of Asia before European colonization were pirates. Kasi nga flourishing yung trades eh. Yung trade sa atin through the sea. So obviously there would be pirates. Now after China was defeated by the West, this had an effect on Japan. So Japan militarized and modernized its military by the late 19th century. And the effect of the modernization of the military of Japan, okay, basically they did this by copying what made the West strong, and that is their navy. And in 1905, through the Battle of Tsushima, Japan defeated Russia in the Battle of Tsushima in 1905. So this was the first time that the white man was demonstrated that this was the first time that the white man could be defeated. So this was the inspiration of Japan all over the world, in the Arab world, in Africa, in China, in India, everywhere. Okay, everywhere in the world where the white man was supreme, this news had a lasting impact. So even the Chinese, no, looked up to Japan during this moment. But the problem with Japan is Japan became part of the West. You know, they copied the West. So after they defeated Russia, they copied the West. And the way the West run the world during that time was through colonization. So after the 1919 Treaty of Versailles, you know, the Pacific had to be divided. So the Germans were defeated after World War I. So the German colonial holdings in the Pacific had to be divided. And Japan was one of the beneficiaries of the division of the spoils of the war. So ngayon, Japan was getting stronger. So Japan displaced, you know, the Western powers in Asia by following the West. Okay, and so Japan undertook several colonization projects in China and Indochina, etc. But the thing is, while they're colonizing, while they are displacing the West through their own version of colonization, Japan, you know, whether it is intended or unintended consequence of their colonization projects, Japan actually sped up the decolonization in Southeast Asia. Kaya in Southeast Asia, all their liberation, revolution, etc. against their colonial masters, it had a strong link with Japan. They had a strong link with Japan. So, except in the Philippines, okay? Because sa Pilipinas, those who unquote collaborated with the Japanese were actually vilified by the American directed education. That's why you would hear the word makapili. Okay, but what those Filipinos were actually doing were not so different from what liberation movements in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Myanmar, Laos were doing. Okay, they saw an opportunity with what Japan was doing in order to defeat the Western powers colonizing their countries. So that's why when you look at Southeast Asia, those who didn't, the Philippines is the only one, you know, that didn't collaborate with Japan. Or we collaborated, but they were vilified. So we re-embraced our colonizer. But others, they actually stood triumphant against their colonizer. So this was Japan. Japan's rise was military. Okay. And okay, the continuous rise of Japan, no, the rise of the rising sun was actually stopped by the West. And for better or for worse, the US nuked Japan and demilitarized Japan. And until now, Japan is occupied by American military. So the Japanese project that would reorder Asia was put on hold. Then came the birth of Singapore, okay, under Lee Kuan Yew. So what did Lee Kuan Yew did? Well, Lee Kuan Yew, no, and his political party developed a new agenda. It's a development and modernization with Singaporean characteristics. So Lee Kuan Yew was educated in the West, but at the same time, Lee Kuan Yew had a Chinese background, and Lee Kuan Yew collaborated with a lot of Chinese scholars who were studying in universities who were not following the colonial mindset of the West. So Lee Kuan Yew successfully led the rise of Singapore. Okay, dramatic rise of Singapore from a very, very small nation to one of the wealthiest nations in the planet. Okay, without following the developmental and modernization model of the West. Okay, kung hindi nyo alam, Singapore didn't sign any human rights, either of the International Human Rights Convention treaties, either the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the ICESR, the International Covenant on Economic, Cultural, I forget the other C, Economic, Cultural Rights. So Singapore didn't sign any of those conventions. It wanted to be Singapore. Okay. So when China, entered a new period of its history after Mao, China learned from Singapore. Deng Xiaoping, sent thousands of civil servants to Singapore to learn from the Singaporean experience. Okay, so now enter the phase of technocratic socialism. Because before, the socialism was not technocratic in China; it was actually ideological. It's still a very ideological based socialism. Then ushered in a new period of socialism in China, and that is a more technocratic socialism kind of socialism, and they learn it from Singapore because Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew's party was actually originally named a socialist party. Through the advice of a Dutch economist, they removed the word socialism because nga may imbiyer na ang mga Western countries, no? So they changed the name of the party, remove socialism, but still, it was still socialism in practice. So then learn from Singapore. And until now, I believe the National University of Singapore has a specific program for Chinese civil servants. So then learn from Singapore. And ano ba to? Ano nangyayari? And then in 2014, another Asian country has defeated with Western supremacy, and this time without firing a single bullet. Which country is this? Well, that is China. Okay? In 2014, China has overtaken the United States in terms of GDP, PPP, purchasing power parity. Okay, so their money is worth, so ibig sabihin ng purchasing power, the purchasing power of China is now higher than the United States. And what is amazing about this, okay, if you're gonna look at the different pivotal events in the rise of Asia, in 1905, it was the Japanese military victory against Russia that actually inspired the rise of Asia. In 1959, the birth of Singapore, Singapore carving its own developmental path actually inspired, another power to actually develop in its own way, and that is China. And China overtook the United States, a Western nation, in 2014 in terms of GDP, PP, even though that China is still a developing country. So in all sense of the word, China is still a developing country. Its GDP per capita is actually much, it's even less than 30% than the United States. So, and that made it very historical, because this is the first time that a developing country has become this so important in the economic history of the world, even though that its GDP per capita is still much lower than the leading Western economy. So, as you can see, the West do not know how to handle the rise of China, because the rise of Japanese is easier to handle because it's just military. So you defeat it militarily. Okay? Singapore, they don't know what to do with Singapore, because Singapore is too small and yet resisting westernization of its political system. And China has defeated them economically without even firing a single bullet at any Western nation. So now we are witnessing a reordering of Asia, okay, ushered in by three pivotal moments in the rise of Asia: Japan, Singapore, and China. And now we ask, where are you, Philippines? Okay? Nasaan tayo sa mga sandaling ito? Because that would determine, if we know our place in the historical progression of the world, then we would have a better long-term planning about where our country should be going. But the problem is we don't have that kind of long-term vision, okay? Because our understanding of our past is very, very sketchy. It doesn't have a narrative, okay? It's still episodic. We cannot trace our destiny to the future because we cannot even trace, the progression of our historical development, of why we are here, of why we are having this kind of development as a people. So now, the rise of China, as Professor Anna has elaborated, is now having a global projection, and it comes with the revival of the Silk Road. Okay, so kung nakita nyo to, so this was the circuit of the world, okay, in 1300. So as you can see, the rise of China is going to revive that, okay? So with its Belt and Road Initiative, railroads, etc. So if you can see here, where is the Philippines? We will be left out. Okay? China doesn't need to go to war with us, just like how Russia went to war with Ukraine. Because because Russia cannot ignore Ukraine. It's impossible for Russia to ignore what's happening in Ukraine. For a lot of reasons, cultural, ideological. But the Philippines, the optimum strategy of China is to ignore. No? I don't think, I don't know if you have been following Chinese foreign policy. When Wang Yi met with Jake Sullivan, Wang Yi was very clear to Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor of the United States. Wang Yi told Jake Sullivan that Taiwan is the red line. So he was very clear. So it means that, South China Sea is not a red line for them. Maybe it's a pink line, maybe it's a tame, mapusyaw na pulang linya yang South China Sea. Why? Because the South China Sea is actually going to be, it's going to be less of a vulnerability to the economy of China, with the opening of a port in Myanmar. Okay, so China is now building a port It's now ongoing. A deep water port in Myanmar. So when that happens, China would already resolve. It's what we call the Molucca Strait problem. So it will bypass. China will be able to bypass already the South China Sea, no, for a lot of its trade, and combine this with rail transport. So kaya kaya I understood what Wang Yi said, that Taiwan is the red line for them because Taiwan is territory of China as a whole. It's one China, and you know, and the Philippines, with all its pretension that the United States love it, the Philippines was not never even mentioned by Biden in in what it wanted to ask from the U.S. Congress of 100 billion package, no? Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine. Those were the only three major beneficiaries that Biden wanted the U.S. Congress to consider. Maybe the Philippines is somewhere there, no, but we are a peripheral to the U.S. defense, because what's important for the United States is Taiwan, because Taiwan is like Israel. It's a powder keg. Maganda yung pagkasabi ni Kawintong, no? It's a powder keg na pwede, or landmine, no? It's a landmine that the United States is creating dyan sa Taiwan. Para kung magkamali lang, either United States or US, there would be a gulo dito sa ating region. And kasi it's easy because the way to defeat China, is to actually destroy its economy. That's the only way that you can defeat China. Destroy its own economy. Why? Because if its economy gets imperiled, there will be unrest inside China. Okay? Because the CPC, the Chinese party of the Communist Party of China, its legitimacy depends on its ability to improve the economy of China. So the best way to defeat it is to actually destroy the economy of China from within. But it would be very difficult for them. And one of the ways to do that is to give China a war, But I don't think China would even bite it outside Taiwan, okay? Because Taiwan is part of the territory of China. But but China can wait. China had been existing for 5,000 years. If it could wait for 500 more years to integrate China to the mainland, what's 500 years in compared to 5,000 years or 100 years, no? So tama si Kamentong, the United States, and tama rin si Kaado, the United States is actually, they want to engage China in a debilitating military conflict. Okay? And because that's the only way to actually destroy the Chinese economy from the outside. And we don't know how they could be successful. But the key question is, where is the Philippines in all of these? Okay, I would like to end my opening statement, with the advice of Napoleon 200 years ago to an Englishman. Okay, because the English, wanted to launch a war against the Chinese, against China. So Napoleon told the Englishman, alam mo, yung nagpapayo sa iyo, nagirahin ang China, that is, you should consider that person as a national threat to your survival as a nation. So bakit sinabi yun ni Napoleon? Because according to Napoleon, China has immense resources. It has its own inner strength. It has been existing for a long time, has a long history of centralized and strong government. So even though if you defeat China now, China will just develop its own strength and defeat you later on. So the civilizational cycle of China doesn't follow the linear thinking of those who are advising that China could be defeated. And remember, when Napoleon advised this to the Englishman, China was so different then in terms of military strength and economic and industrial power. The China that we have now, is the strongest China had ever been in terms of military, economic, and industrial capacity in its 5,000-year history. So Napoleon advised the Englishman 200 years ago, you ought to monopolize the whole China trade to yourselves. Instead of going to war with the Chinese, it were better to launch a war with the nations who desire to trade with them. So, sabi niya, imbis na girahin mo yung China, no, makipag-compete ka, i-out-compete mo yung mga gustong makipag-trade sa China. Because that is the strength of China. You know, it will remain, it was an economic center of the world for a very, very long time. Now it is on its path to rejuvenation, and its rejuvenation is guided by its history. And katulad ng sinabi ni Wang Yi, ni Jake Sullivan, and every policy maker in the Philippines, especially security policy maker, should have listened to what Wang Yi said. Wang Yi told Jake Sullivan, the rejuvenation of China cannot be stopped because China has its own endogenous logic. Ibig sabihin ng endogenous, inner logic. Okay? Meron siyang inner logic. Kanyang development is determined by its inner logic. Which, of course, what Singapore told the West before as well. That Singapore has its own inner logic. We will not follow the modernization of the West. We might learn and copy bits of pieces, but it will be a modernization and development with Singaporean characteristics. And now, it is now development and modernization and socialism with Chinese characteristics. So, katulad nga ng, to end, I was, as you know, I'm taking my PhD here in Beijing. And during the first day, some of my classmates from Africa were asking about development models. And our professor in political science, told the student from Africa that you cannot use China as a model because China has its own history, its own context, etc. So his advice was to learn how to stand in your own 2 feet, find your own path. You may learn from other countries, just like how China has learned from other countries, but you have to be able to stand with your own 2 feet and follow your own path of development. And this is entirely different with what I have experienced in Europe. I haven't heard any European professor telling people in the developing world this. All they saying is that there is democracy, and this is where your country is, and you must aspire to become democracy ABC because they should be the leading examples of the world. So that's all, and I would like to answer some questions from the audience, both on Zoom and elsewhere.
Thank you, Ms. Asfragando Sasot, for that presentation on the on the Russia. Now we actually have 2 questions here. This one is from, I don't have the name, but Ms. Asfragando Sasot, of the 3 pivotal moments in the rise of Asia, you asked where is the Philippines in this equation? Do you consider, although it may be short-lived, what happened in September 1991 when the Philippines expelled the American bases as a sort of a minor pivotal moment in the rise of Asia? Thank you.
Well, the September 1991 was I believe, if we really have an independent If there's an Independence Day that we should be celebrating, that should be what we should be celebrating, no? September 1991, I think it's September 16. Ano nangyayari? Narinig niyo pa ba ako?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. We
So
can hear you loud and clear.
yeah, I think that's part of it. But the thing is, every colonized nation know this. Colonizers will not just leave because freedom is not given. It must be won. Independence cannot be given. It must be won. So we never won our independence. So therefore, we're not yet independent. It was given to us. Can you imagine your mother giving you your independence? Of course, yung nagbigay sa'yo ng independence, you would have an utang na loob there, no? Therefore, you would still be bind with towards that master in some way or another. But compare Vietnam, can you imagine Vietnam? I think one of the pivotal moments as well is Vietnam defeating the United States. No? Pero yung sinasabi ko yung broad brushstrokes, maraming moments, in Asian history, ushering the rise of Asia. But ito lang yung tatlong may malaking implication. But I should have included Vietnam defeating the Americans. Yeah.
Question ba sa Facebook and question ba sa Facebook and YouTube? We're checking now. I have a question and it's a very problematic question. Looking at the 3 turning points in Asia, in Singapore, you had the People's Action Party, an ideological leadership with an ideologically oriented. In China, of course, you have the CPC, the Communist Party of China. And in Japan, Meiji Dynasty, the Meiji regime. So we need a strong, organized force, organized and integrated with a central thought. That is the problem in the Philippines. There is no such. We have continuing over the past at least 70 years. Is our factions, families of the old colonial regime, the domestic, the local compradores, the local trustees of the colonial power, still in power, still rejected during Duterte's victory in 2016, returned again with the same names of the Romualdeses, Aranetas, and so on. There are some options that are rising, but individuals that we are beginning to see, like Baguio Mayor, what's the name? Magalong, Governor Mamba, but the party, the significant, substantial organization is missing. The explicitated ideology is not there too. That's a dilemma, or that's a vacuum that still cannot find anything to fill.
Yeah. Can I react there?
Yes,
Pwede ba
yes,
akong mag-react?
yes, yes.
Okay. Well, I agree with no
Yes,
comment.
yes.
Tong. The last if you're gonna look at political parties, I would consider Katipunan as a political party. It was perfectly dismantled by the United States. And of course, the elite members of the Katipunan collaborated with the Americans. Because why would they keep on dying for the concept of a nation? And I think the next one is the Communist political party, Communist Political Party of the Philippines. They wanted to follow the Chinese Chinese the Communist Party of China. But the problem with the Communist Party of the Philippines is it is actually really a bandit group. No, they couldn't copy what Mao could have done because ito i-share ko lang anecdote. No, when I first visited here in China during the visit of GMA in March, we have someone na ex-member ng CPP-NPA. And so, nando kami sa museum ni Mao Kamento. Tinatanong ko siya, why do you think Joma Sison was not able to accomplish what Mao accomplished? You know what he said? Peke naman daw kasi yung Communist Party of the Philippines because they collaborated with the elite, with the landlords, with everything. So eventually, it's the same structure with the Katipunero. The Katipunero were not really for the people. So you have the elite running what's supposed to be a revolutionary revolutionary political party. That's why the Communist Party of the Philippines will never succeed because they are collaborating with the elite. And now we are seeing it right now. Right? The Makabayan Bloc, the legal front of the CPP-NPA, demanda man nila ako nito, alam ko ito, dahil ako'y tumira ng Netherlands, you know, they are now collaborating with Romualdez and the Marcoses. So there is no reformist party yet in the Philippines. You need a group. You know, you need a strong group. Hindi pa pwede yung individual. We had a Duterte, we had now Benjamin Magalong, but the problem is an individual can die. You know, and if the idea is not yet a group-based idea, nothing will happen there. Kaya pag nawala si Duterte, mawawala rin yung reforma. Just look at what happened with itong kay Bongbong, no? Gusto continuity raw siya na. But the continuity wasn't there because nga it wasn't a party-led, you know, a group-led effort to actually change the political structure of the government. It's still individual-led. And kaya tayo nasa sistemang feudal pa rin tayo, no? I think the most organized sectors of our society are the oligarchs, no? Sila rin naman yung nakikita-kita. Just look at Tatler, no? Those are the Tatler Philippines. That's the organized sector in our society. No, not really this Makabayan group. They are just like really communist party of the Philippines. Kung saan may pera para pang-finance ng kanilang bandit group, doon sila.
Thank you, Ms. Sas. This question is for Professor Ana Malindog-Uy and Ms. And also, okay. This is for Ma'am Sas po. A while ago, Kaado alluded to someone from the other side, Richard Haydarian, who is now trying to have a middle ground on the article in the South China Morning Post recently. You have called for like 60-40 opposition to arbitration. What is your reaction to this, Ms. Sas?
Well, it's Richard Haydarian, you know, he no, Richard, you don't have any intellectual honesty, no? Nag-debate tayo ng 2019, yan ang stud ko. Tapos ngayon naman yan ang stud muli. I think, you know, that debate was watched by 1 million people on Facebook. You cannot deny what you were suggesting during that time, inviting the Americans in back. Tapos ngayon, anong gusto niya about the EDCA sites? Tigilan na raw ang pag-add ng EDCA sites. You know, Richard, you should know the Americans more, no? Because you are working for them. Once you give the Americans an entry point and inopen mo na at bumuka ka na dyan, sa tingin mo mapapaalit mo sila ng ganun lang? No! Ang history, no? Pinapasok. Can you imagine, Aguinaldo just let the Americans put its one foot in the Philippines and then it got the entire Philippines, including Sulu, which was an independent political community then. So you are historically inept, no? Kaya dapat makikinig kayo, sina Kaado, sina Ka-Evento. You have to listen, you know, with people with a historical perspective. Dahil ito, malalaman natin kung nasaan tayo ngayon. Hindi kang bigla kang magsasuggest na gusto mo kagad ng 60-40. Ano yung isa pa? Yung joint fishery. We have been suggesting that since 2016, no? And some of here are even earlier, 2015, 2016. And now you're suggesting it now? Where were you all this time? Diba? Yan lang.
Not only Mrs. He dissented from the position of the Strat base, where he said he also pushed for more China-funded infrastructure projects.
Yeah, of course. Because where are you gonna? I don't know. No, maybe Richard A. Barian maybe is positioning himself to have a government position, because I know how Richard A. Barian thinks. I have worked with him, and how can you deny that China is the one funding infrastructure all over the world right now? No, it's impossible to deny that. That is just a fact. And yeah, I agree with him that there must be more Chinese funded infrastructure project, but we must not forget that during the time of Duterte, while Duterte was courting funding from China for different infrastructure projects, it was Richard Heydarian who was actually alarming the bells that the Philippines will be in a debt trap like Sri Lanka. Ano ba yan? Na parang, I don't know about this bipolar mentality of Heydarian. Where is this coming from? But we cannot forget, we're both teachers, Heydarian, and as teachers, we have very strong memories. Otherwise, we will not be able to grade our students well. But that history is just so recent. Di ba, ikaw nga kalaban namin sa iyong China debt trap. Ngayon, gusto mo naman ngayon ng China-funded infrastructure. Ano nangyari doon sa China debt trap mo? You must have some intellectual honesty. Hey, Darian, you cannot have your China debt trap narrative while at the same time courting China investment on infrastructure. One, you cannot square the circle no matter how well-dressed or well-presented you are in front of the public.
Yeah. No,
Ayun
thank you.
okay na ako.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, Mrs. Rolando Sasso. We have many positive comments coming in from our YouTube channel. Shirley Velosta says, yes, marami na rin namang nagbulgar Congress, Mamba, Magalong at Teves, kaya ginigipit mga nagbulgar. Pero ikaw, Mrs., ang pinakamatinding nagbulgar at na-open ng kaisipan ng mamamayan. Yes, we have 400 participants on watching us live on Facebook and in YouTube right now. Thank you for all of the viewers. There are a lot of comments. This comment from Shirley Vilostas was alluding to your recent expose, Ms. Sas, about the legalized corruption in Congress. Would you like to give a few summary of what that legalized corruption is? Thank you.
Well, the summary is the MOOE of Congress, amounts to billions of pesos every year. Hindi kailangan ng resibo sa liquidation. Just the certification of the congressman, ang MOOE niya ay ginamit sa ginamit nga sa MOOE. So this is legalized corruption because you are not individually audited. Kung pwede ba yan, hindi ka individually audited? Na para malaman kung tama yung paggasta mo sa MOOE mo at hindi mo winaldas. That's not allowed. We are copying US Congress. We copied our system from the United States. And in US Congress, every quarter, merong statement of disbursement ang US Congress. Makikita mo doon ang lahat ng pinapasweldo ng congressman. Makikita mo doon ang lahat ng kanilang ginagastos every quarter. Kahit parking, kahit nga $1.65 na nakalista doon at nakikita mo. So that's why it's legalized corruption. If you're not individually audited, therefore may kupit. That's just as simple as that. Even in the corporate world, that's the policy. If you are handling the corporation, the money of the corporation, you have to be individually audited. So if the Philippines will not resolve this, I'm sorry, no, you're not gonna be able to develop further, because a lot of money of the Filipino people are being wasted in unproductive activities. Can you imagine ang isang congressman, isang congressman ay may 20 million na MOOE. Ano yung ROI niyan? We don't know, this is a continuation of the colonial government of the United States. Ang ginawa ng United States in order to get the elite, nagpapamudmud sila ng pera. That's the root of our current system na pinagpapatuloy pa rin natin.
Okay, well, salamat po sa oras po ninyo, Madam Sasot, Rogandos. Salamat po sa oras po ninyo, Madam Rogando Sasot, and Mana Malindogoy, Paglinawan. So I'll pass on the mic to, and of course to the 400 participants and the media who took time to join us here, and the media in Zoom. We hope you can help us spread the discussion of this very important issues and principles and perspectives. So I'll give the mic back to our moderator, Danny Long.
Thank you very much to all our speakers, Kamentong, Kaado, Professor Ana Malindogoy, and Ms. Sasrogando Saso, and to everyone who is watching us. We have a last question here from Giancarlo in Zoom. Bakit di po ito natatalakay sa media?
Nandiyan pa ba si Sasot? Well, okay. So, kaya po tayo nandito at yung ibang mga kaibigan natin sa media naman sa ating pagpapakalat po ng mga issue na to. But it is also up to you to help us spread the discussions instead of enjoying just basketball and all these other things. Let's spend our time on serious questions. Only through our conscious acts of revolution of our society can we move forward, just like Singapore did, Japan did, China did, and that is our mission, to help our nation move forward.
Thank you once again to all the speakers. Sorry. Go ahead, Ms.
I will just give a short comment. No, the reason why media is not covering this, because the media is American, ano yan eh, under American direction yung mainstream media. Aminin man nila o hindi, just look at, just perform a simple content analysis ng mga international news na pinapalabas ng mainstream media sa Pilipinas. They are very aligned with the United States. You don't even understand what's going on in the world in its historical context. You para ka lang magbasa ka na lang ng US State Department policy paper, and that is basically what the Philippine mainstream media is doing. Now, there are journalists, no? There are journalists who would like to write a more balanced or even pieces leaning to the American-centric view of the world. Pero the thing is, wala naman silang freedom of speech, because the content that would have to be publicized are those na dumaan sa editorial curation. And the editors are very pro-American. So the real bastion of freedom of speech is actually social media. You express your views, hindi ka sakop ng editorial control ng mga American-centric. Pero of course, the algorithm now is being controlled by the powers that be. But we have to keep on forging on just to give a different perspective. Otherwise, you know what? We will be left out. Bangladesh is already on its trajectory to be one of the economic centers in Asia, at least in Southeast Asia, especially with the construction of 2 nuclear Can you imagine nuclear power plants by Russia in Bangladesh and the train that would connect Lhasa and I think a Chinese city. So that's just it. Where are we going? And why are these people, not concerned where we are going? It's because they don't need to be concerned about you. They already have fat bank accounts in offshore banks somewhere else in the Philippines. They don't really care about you guys. If they cared about you, then we could have been Singapore already for a long time. We have the talent, we have the intelligent people, we have a democracy, my God, for God's sake. But then we are the basket case of Asia. Actually, we are the basket case of Asia.
All right. All right. It's now 30. I'd like to close again. Finally, thank you to all of our speakers, everyone who joined us, audience in Zoom, and our media friends. Thank you for everyone who participated in this discussion. Let us remember the heed of our Vice President Sara Duterte. Filipinos must work for peace and de-escalation in the Middle East and Israel and Palestine. Save the Gaza people. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.